This is a wall on the side of an apartment building. You have no clue. It's just a wall.
The streets will flow red once more, a great torrent rushing down Rue de Espérance. You wait and see.
The streets will not flow red with anything. Who are you?
I'm Cindy the fucking Skull. What else do you want to know? Date of birth, blood type, the last time I was tested for Hep C.
Go where? Accosting a minor?
Listen to your partner, pig man. Keep your grubby hooves off little old ladies.
A brush, an artist. The red splatter is urban expressionism.
Can't you tell? I'm painting a beautiful mural, an aereo graffitio visible from low orbit. I haven't really started it yet. I'm waiting for the right words. Have you ever tried your hand at graffitio? When faced with a blank wall, most people write unimaginative stuff, like pigs go home and Mona was here. We rarely see pigs round here, though. Just union cads. And my name's not Mona, so...
She wants it to be something true and total.
This place is severely lacking in havoc. Not even the occasional trash can fire to break up the tedium. I thought I'd mix it up, you know, summon the forces of crime and social chaos with a wall-sized invitation. Yeah? Lying is cool, I guess.
She nods disdainfully toward the woman performing maintenance on the boat docked next to the pier. Hatred, disgust, it's difficult to tell which of the two is more present in her girlish features. The woman on the boat does not notice her staring.
That Ozon whore. Someone's got to keep an eye on her.
Ozon is an archipelago 2 days' travel away from Rivershore. Its moneyed residents, used to posh restaurants and upscale boutiques, rarely have reason to visit Martinez.
Probably the Wild Pines rep. We should talk to her. She's a professional negotiator, though. I have the feeling she will be very cooperative while telling us nothing. You should take the lead. Ask her unexpected questions, you know? Do your thing. Don't be afraid to get a bit wacky. Throwing her off is our best bet.
Good idea, piggies. Run along now. fuck her shit up good. Impound that boat while you're at it. I'd like to watch her swim back to us on. I ain't no snitch, pigstein. Go forth and forage in someone else's shit. No shortage of squealers in these parts.
Actually, there is a shortage of people who talk to us in a normal, calm, informative manner.
We weren't put on this earth to make your life pleasant, fucko. Watch your back, ungulate. You've got eyes on you.
A striking woman leans against the cabin top of her sailing boat, smiling as you approach. Her green raincoat glistens with droplets. A silk scarf is tied around her throat.
Good afternoon, officers. I'm Joyce. Joyce Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbour. You gentlemen must be from the RCM. Beaton, my maiden name. I'm glad to see you here. I was dispatched to handle a strike, not a lynching. Anything I can do to assist the RCM in this matter, I will, gladly.
That is good to hear, madame. My colleague will take the lead on this interview. I should let you know that he is recovering from an unusual medical episode. Very unusual. But I can assure you of his ultimate competency.
There's a trace of irony in his voice. Mischief, even. This is a tactic.
How interesting. I wish you a swift recovery. In the meanwhile, you have my full cooperation, and the full cooperation of the Wild Pines Group.
It's hard to get a read on her precise disposition, but she appears helpful.
Why, yes I am. Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around? I mean, we are on Le Caillou, are we not?
Technically, the neighboring Ozone and Fas Alamer island groups are archipelagos, while La Caillou, by contrast, is a single fertile landmass, the fourth largest island in the world. It is not an archipelago.
Okay, if you want to get technical. The point is, we're all on islands here, and sail is still the most expedient way to get from one island to another, especially when you're in a hurry to resolve a strike. I haven't seen anyone else drive a souped-up Capri Kenema motor carriage either.
Actually, that motor carriage has been specially issued to serve as a patrol and pursuit vehicle. It's for crossing long distances in the greater Ravachol industrial harbor. It's not a toy.
Neither is this. A toy, I mean. It's a machine for crossing long distances in the Bay of Revachol, between the city and the islands.
You need to make this lady admit she's only riding around on this boat because she's rich. Why what? Stop thinking. Take her down. Before you do, it might be pertinent to ask a few more questions. Learn whatever you can about this boat of hers.
The boat? No, it is called Cordelati 19 because that's the type of sloop it is.
The word "it" feels strange. Such a beautiful boat deserves a proper name.
Okay, how about Cordelati 19? Why? Because it was manufactured in Revachol East by a company called Cordelati, and its hull is 19 paces long.
She makes a point of being unromantic about it.
What? I think I'll stick with the factory name, but thank you. It's a pleasure craft, a 19 pacer. It also happens to be rated for Category 1 racing, though these days I mainly use it for business. My sloop? I like it a lot. It's the eel's hips, baby.
I'm enjoying this part of the interview. It has so little to do with the murder we're investigating.
I really do, the lieutenant thinks. Is she thrown off yet? He's looking at the woman, assessing her.
Officer, I assure you I'm a highly qualified pleasure craft operator.
The crowns of her teeth are porcelain, white as the boat's hull as she smiles. Her nonchalance might be related to something called the Wayfarer Act, a law that says she doesn't need a license. Sly fox, you're not aggressive enough to harass her further on this.
Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that it's a symbol of conspicuous consumption? That I'm a member of the ruling class?
Detective, may I remind you that Mrs. Messier is a professional negotiator.
Then what does that say? Does it say docking reserved for residents of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A? 33A? This old proletarian haunt here? As I said, plenty of people drive boats, of all social strata.
She takes a sip.
Okay.
Nothing happens for quite a while. It doesn't.
My, it's as if there's a tiny spinner on the side of his head and he's reeling thoughts out.
Except he isn't.
The lieutenant is satisfied with where this is going.
Of course. Lieutenant, I truly don't understand what is happening here.
I told you his methods are unconventional.
It was quite a while ago, but I think, yes, we were discussing my fast, large, ineluctably middle-class boat. Good. What we do. I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking.
There was a touch of discomfort there. She wants to merely represent.
The Pines' core competency is logistics. Container shipping, freight, that sort of thing. See those airships there, blinking? Those are the shipping side of things. And that is the terminal. Another subdivision deals with energy, oil and gas exploration, offshore platforms.
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo-tribes, companies awarded royal monopolies by the king, the suzerain himself, centuries ago. The king is long gone, but several of the Indo-tribes remain. Saint-Baptiste, Elysium, an unknown entity known as Brightest Star.
Why, thank you. I'm not at liberty to discuss the company balance sheet, but I can tell you that last year, the company booked more than 20 billion real in revenue. Yes, past a certain point, numbers begin to seem imaginary, but they are quite real for the 72,000 employees who depend on Wild Pines for their paychecks.
A conglomerate the size of Wild Pines is like a shark. If it stops moving and growing, it will die. Then what becomes of those 72,000 families? It is a tremendous responsibility. They started as an exploration and cargo fleet conducting trade between the Samaran and Insulindian Isolas 250 years ago, when pine ships explored the South Seminese and charted Lomantang on behalf of the suzerain. Centuries of care, deliberation, and madness have gone into this endeavor. Vessels pass through the great unrest to re-emerge with apricots in tow. The logic of the system is totalizing. It's taken everything from its employees to build it. You know more than you let on. Certainly it helped, but most of the original Indo tribes have failed or been absorbed. To survive, Wild Pines had to grow and adapt. No suzerain did that. You mean aside from being the terminal's legal owners, who are responsible for moving 8% of the world's cargo? There are no minor cogs in the system. Each terminal must be accounted for, lest the entire system break. Every hiccup in such a system means thousands lose their jobs, the world over. I'm here to assure that doesn't happen.
With your help, hopefully, says her warm tone.
Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Aliments that gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus. Why? By throwing off half a century of foreign domination under the Coalition. Unfortunately for you, the Coalition also leases you the right to police West Revachol.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot, in other words.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labour Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
No way. She's more. She can make decisions.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place. Now they won't even let me into the harbour. There's a 2-meter-20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. Yes, Jean-Luc Measurehead. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike?
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive.
Ludicrous even. It's meant.
There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Oh yes. Every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
Fortunately, they explained it. Every time the Wild Pines Group makes a decision about anything, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group. They're having a blast. But how can they afford it? After 4 months, my assumption was they would prefer a more practical solution. I'm not sure. Naturally, I assumed that was just their opening position, a hard-nosed tactic with a side of mockery. But there's been no follow-up, just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the bowyer at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, "Call me mañana."
This checks out.
Mr. Clare told him to... How did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union.
Sounds like usual aggressive posturing.
The scabs? You mean the huddled masses of Jamrock come to plead for work where the union refuses to? If they were organized by Wild Pines or its affiliates, then it would be a company secret. I could not share it with you. Not right now, at least.
It's implied she's open to discussing this matter with you at a later occasion.
Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first. Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Yes, Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organised labour at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
A mob. The Débardeurs are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Débardeurs Union is... Of course, officer. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore, or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Indeed. The company suspects foul play, but there's nothing they could do. It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else can I help? Quite a few things, I'm afraid. The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi from Precinct 57. And this is my colleague from Precinct 41. I'm afraid he doesn't have his badge at the moment. I hope mine will suffice.
How curious. Why is that, Detective?
Awkwardness washes over the conversation. The woman doesn't like this turn of events. 'Twas stolen by some artist, surely. Best to pin the blame on them. Everyone knows you can't trust artists. Everyone knows you can't trust artists. They're nearly as bad as clowns.
I see. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode? Oh dear. I suppose this does explain some of the more curious turns in our conversation.
She must have been suspecting something for a while now.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be very unconventional, but he is an officer of the RCM.
Of course, I sympathize, but I'm afraid I simply can't share anything more until I've seen that badge.
Hang on. She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement. She's a negotiator. Just float a favor at her. Insinuate.
I will be frank with you. If I'm going to break protocol, I need to be able to justify it to my superiors. They're going to want to see something very tangible.
You're in, but expect her to drive a hard bargain.
Reports from inside Terminal B suggest it's a hub for the local drug trade. This is an open secret in Martinez. The Union controls the terminal, so it goes to reason.
They're profiting from this trade.
The company has tried looking into this matter before, to no avail. Perhaps someone with your authority and resources might turn over the right stones. Or you can recover your badge. Though if I may be blunt with you, it sounds like that may be a lost cause.
Detective, a word in private before we continue.
Lonesome, long way home. Here we go. Home awaits. Walk past Station 41 and through the market, past the Boogie Street spearhead to the other side of the lake, the frozen eye at the center of the district. Then past the video rental store on the corner. There, at the end of a street lined with pine trees, a small house no larger than a matchbox. 11 Voyager Road. You no longer live there. Those times are gone. And so are those people. Why did you come here? Why are you still here? And where's the dealer? You have to get back to work. That's all you have now.
This is not going quite as I hoped it would, Detective. Honestly, I was expecting you to use your unorthodox technique to keep her off balance and, not volunteer us to be her henchman. This woman is running circles around us. She might have known about your misplaced badge all along, or she's simply an adept improviser. Either way, we've played straight into her hands.
He doesn't let it show, but there is a limit to how much the consequences of your unprofessional behavior can cost the investigation. Maybe this is all her plan. She might have heard about you.
I wouldn't go that far. Her reaction did come off as sincere to me. I think she's just quick to adapt. She's a professional, after all. No, if there is reasonable suspicion, we must investigate. Otherwise, she could claim we're siding with the Union, or that we're on their take. We'd never hear the end of it. What I propose is, we ask her, then we investigate, briefly. But do not share the outcome of this investigation with her. We tell her it's done and demand for her information on the lynching. Oh, that would be fantastic, but do we have the time? The world is large and your badge is 8 by 6 centimeters.
The situation might have changed drastically by the time you locate it. Time is of the essence.
You could request a new one from the station, but that would literally take months.
You're back. What can I help you with? This reality.
Yes, reality is your side case. An experimental side case.
How truly curious. A sort of philosopher detective.
Are they now?
A deep synthesis. I'll assist you however I can then. Go ahead. Ask.
All right, we're in. I know these all look good, but begin with the first, okay?
We're in Martinez, baby. Martinez is a district of Revachol. A very small district tucked away near the industrial harbour, north of the 881 and Jamrock. You would be excused for not knowing about it. Unimportant, they say. Forgotten even. Shelled to smithereens during the Revolution. It has its charms, just not this time of year. I'm not a good ambassador. I've only been here once before, as a teenager. Not a lot has changed. There are ruins, a terminal, fishing boats, reeds, boys with boxy shoulders. This place used to be a province, a workers' resort before the city swallowed it and the artillery did its work. The reeds are the real star of the show here now. The further down the coast, the wilder it gets. It's not really a sea, it's the Bay of Revachol, and the bay feeds into the ocean. Yes, we're on an island in an ocean, the world's largest body of water, the Insulindic.
Known to the early Revacholians as Les Immensités Bleues, the blue immensities. Vast, lukewarm and unknowable, flowing in and out of sight.
Caillou, as you already know. Imagine a pebble. A smoothed-over pebble amidst a great blue sea, misshapen, cracked. The cracks are the river Esperance. We're in the delta of this river, on the 6th branch, the Martinez distributary.
It is clear this pebble is of enormous value to her, and to humanity at large.
I would be happy to. What is a preposterously expensive education for, if not sharing?
It remains a mystery what you mean by this something close. This isn't about you. It's about reality.
These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late. For the big time. The revolution. It's quite easy. Every 100 years or so, our species gets together to decide what's next, who gets shot in the head, and who gets the mineral rights. It's a real kerfuffle. Those would be the communists. Generally speaking, 40 million people got shot in the head during the World Revolution. But the communists, they all got shot in the head.
She's not gloating. It's a relieved celebration.
Oh, and the anarchists too. They shot them well. So well, one forgets they even existed.
She likes the totality of it.
Indeed. They piled them in mass graves in Ozon. And, well, that's the last anyone heard of those people. Did they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people. Yes, the Red Deluge. The Insulindian Deluge, they call it. Yes, an acute thiamine deficiency can be exacerbated by alcoholism. Exacerbated means made worse. Oh, lots of people. Even the king got shot in the head, or thrown beneath a horse, or drowned. Accounts differ. It was unceremonious. Just as well, he wasn't actually the king. Just the king's nephew. The real king abdicated and lived out a long and productive life as a venture capitalist in Grad. I prefer the term risk-averse. King Guillaume was nobody's fool. He could smell a PR disaster brewing, so he got out alive, and his nephew Fricelle got shot in his place. Him and tens of thousands of his wonderfully fascist kingsmen. It was a wild time. The liberals got the mineral rights. And by mineral rights, I mean everything. Liberals are usually middle-class people, Detective. Or the remaining gentry. The beneficiaries of the pre-revolutionary arrangement. Some were rich enough to stay with the constitution, with monarchy. Big mistake. Others bet on the revolution. They were called the ultras or ultra-liberals. They fared well. They didn't win so much as survive. We were the last ones standing when the war ended. Everyone else got shot in the head, remember?
We. She's one of them. Of course.
To foreign intervention. The coalition. Those people really took the mineral rights. The liberals took everything that wasn't nailed to the ground. The coalition took the ground. The ocean, the laws, and the people. The coalition of nations. Grad, Mesque, Vesper, Messina, Oranje, and Sur-la-Clay, the armed center of the world. They landed here and ended the revolution. It was the moralist thing to do.
There is bitterness in her voice, tempered with understanding. She is critical, but ultimately understands the cause.
The moralists believe in keeping everything exactly the way it is. They believe in mineral rights, and not shooting people in the head. At least not in the same manner and volume as the others do. They are the long-standing provisional rulers of Revachol now, the coalition government. This is their zone of control. They embolden the RCM with crumbs of the same law they took. Technically speaking, you are a moralist.
The color of moralism is blue. The official motto of Moral Intern, or Moralist International, is a blue forget-me-not, a piece of grey sky. Unofficial. For a moment, there was hope.
Of course. Not easy to be moderate about head shooting in your line of work. The turn of the century revolution? Don't answer it. It's a trick question. The revolution began in '02 on the Isla of Grad, though by the end nearly the whole world had gotten involved. It wasn't a who, but a what. A pandemic of Zarat, a particularly virulent prion disease, which the authorities in Grad proved unable to contain. Then Mazov came along and overthrew the government. It made people overthrow their governments. Indeed, Zarat is a highly infectious microorganism that destroyed brain tissue. The actual causes of the revolution were material. The pandemic only provided the spark. From Revachol and Grad? Not far. The world managed to cauterize itself. Mazov's government was overthrown in '08, and the coalition crushed the Revachol commune 2 years later. It was the end. Why? You and I, officer. Our lives in the zone of control.
Something tells you her life and yours are not that similar. Maybe it's because she has a boat and you have that necktie? A pair of pants?
No doubt. But we share the same time and position on the planet's crust. That counts for more than you think. A city-state divided into free market zones under the everlasting interregnum of the Coalition of Nations. And you, of course, the citizens' militia.
The clatter of typewriter keys fills the main hall of the reappropriated silk mill. Precinct 41. Chad Tilbrook presses enter. Outside, Officer Elfboy Williams slams the door of an armored motor carriage.
The Zone of Control is the third incarnation of Revachol, after the failure of the Suzerain and the Commune. Modernity. They developed the marvels of the inter-eastlery communication, telematic milieus, radiation, colored plastics. Meanwhile, in Revachol West, the aftermath continues for the 5th decade.
51 minus 8 equals 43.
Time flies. The 20s saw a decade of urban war, west of the river leveled, offshore platforms in flames. Still, it's regarded as an improvement on what came before. 08 to 19 was simply hell. The 30s? Things settled down in the 30s. Revachol East transformed itself into the world's largest tax haven, with the international community's blessing. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like things were going somewhere. No, it was a market mirage fueled by cocaine and quantitative easing. The 40s dispelled it like a cold splash, an Isla-wide hangover, you might say. And here we are. Welcome to reality, baby.
From the looks of it, the 50s haven't been much better for the Zone of Control. You can see it in her eyes. Days slipping away.
I've no right to be dissatisfied. This shirt is Barbara Muscova, this raincoat is impervious to rain and is guaranteed for 100 years. My daughters will wear it. No, it's just... we could have had so much more. Every one of us. If only we played it right. Good question. What would you have done differently? So a quarter of humanity simply lost their minds. And how would you stop a prion, a complex folding protein, unlife, with the technology 50 years ago? Good hygiene. Really. A very moderate solution to an extreme problem. It's those sort of half measures that doomed the authorities in Grad. When they failed to step up, Marzov and his party stepped in. In this particular case, maybe a more robust state response might have been appropriate.
Opinions expressed here do not reflect the official position of the RCM.
And what is your official position, Lieutenant?
My position, ma'am? My parents got ripped to shreds in the revolution. I would have gone the same way. I was saved by being 2 years old. That's my position. The abattoir.
Understandable. They are what they are. Who knows? An afterbloom may yet come. Anyway, enough sentimentality. Is there anything else you want to know?
Not so fast. Who is she in all this? Ask her who she is. She owes you an answer. She won't maneuver her way out of this one.
I am the vilest of the vile. A traitor. A devourer of nations and infants. I am an ultra. Yes. I am the nether creature of the Forbidden Swamp. I pushed the king under a shit wagon and betrayed the revolution. My kind surrendered the nation to financial colonists. I can see you thought we'd gone extinct. After all, no sane person identifies as an ultra-liberal anymore. Not in broad daylight. You're a centrist at heart. A real moralist, no? Tell me, now that I've uncoiled myself, do you find me frightening?
In her green eyes, you see a mixture of truth and self-satire. Decades of guilt and pride. Forgive her. But only because you like pearlescent teeth and those light green eyes.
A devil who being of great charm and guile sneaketh into the homes of the godly.
That dialect is Ubi Sunt. You recognize it's a quote from somewhere, a play written way back in the Franco-Nigerian century.
Ah, maybe you remember more than you let on, despite whatever brain damage the alcohol may have inflicted. I hope so. I hope we are able to continue as friends despite my scaly bulk, and the insanity, bloodshed, and transfer of wealth that took place here. It was not the plan all along. When the dust settled, the Liberals were the only ones left to clean up the mess. By virtue of their survival, they were handed enormous power to shape the future. This was all our last generation managed. With due respect to our overlords, the eternal caretaker government that keeps Martinaise a monument to the efficacy of its artillery, I would not have relinquished sovereignty to the coalition. Not here in Martinaise, and not in the Stella Maris or Delta Beachheads either. If not for my own sake, then for my daughters. We had an obligation to defend our sovereignty. We should have burned the whole Isola down rather than let them have it.
Dark orange flames reflect in her green eyes, an oil fire on the ocean.
Yes, I suppose I am. But I wouldn't be a patriot anywhere but here.
Seditious talk, ma'am.
Yes. Whatever else I am, I'm also a mother and a wife. Now, shall we return to reality?
A strange coldness comes over you as you look at the world. The waves sway the sloop slowly. That's all.
Glad to have been of assistance. Of course, Detective. You're back. Good. What can I help you with? More lessons in basic reality? My favorite part of the day.
A strange coldness comes over you as you look at the...
A bird? A sphenicid? A flightless bird of the polar regions? Some sort of krill hunter? No, wait. You're an ancient ruin. A symbol of hubris and decay. Half submerged in some salty sea. Of course you're not, my dear. I'm just terrible at guessing games. Ah. This is the pier of Rue de Saint-Ghislaine, 33A, where the tenants have been kind enough to rent me a slot. Or two. A pre-revolutionary tenement. Old buildings are called tenements, you see. And new buildings, bâtiments. After les bâtiments nouveaux. But 33A and 33B are not nouveaux. They're old. This one used to be 8 to 10 stories tall. A real high-rise by the standards of the last century. Built to mirror the skyscrapers across the bay in the Delta. That was before the war, of course. Mostly the urban middle class, I believe. This was once primo real estate, before the cannons lopped 4 or 5 stories off.
Splat, splat.
Wonderful. The girl in the old lady rags looks like a sullen and rebellious member of a teen infraculture. Yes, you and I belong to the supraculture. We're common, the herd. The music on the radio, the food in the chain restaurant, those are all too popular for the girl in the old lady rags. She prefers a fantasy world, an infraculture with its own dress code and vernacular. It is an illusion, I'm afraid. There is no refuge from the supraculture. I can't. That's how simple it is. One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead. All right, what next?
Suddenly, you're not so sure you're part of the supraculture.
And what would that be? I can see that, yes. I dabbled in those dark arts myself, not so long ago. I assure you, it was a thoroughly supracultural phenomenon. All permeating. Downright mandatory. Nothing infra about disco, baby. Those days are long behind me. And even in the early 30s, I would say I was more of a new girl. Disco was a minor, but still enjoyable facet of the whole thing for me. The new, a cultural era, and the name of the decade it ravished, the 30s. It came out of post-revolutionary Revachol. It was ultra-liberal. It involved lots of partying, as you might imagine, and champagne-coloured everything. By the looks of it, that would have been when you came of age. Now, wasn't it Guillaume Le Million who said, if you can remember the new, you weren't there?
For some reason, your mind is a veritable repository of Guillaume Le Million lyrics, trivia, and B-sides. But the time to explore this is when you're alone, facing a mirror perhaps. Right now, it would derail the reality lowdown.
Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know. Anything else? It's quite straightforward. Someone is using Terminal B to smuggle raw ingredients from the Samar and Isola into Revachol with the Union's blessing. Wild Pines has suspected it for years.
Ingredients for what, ma'am?
Meth and dextroamphetamine, GBL, and various synthetic psychedelics. Honestly, it might be quicker to say what you can't make from the stuff. Yes, after they clear the terminal, we lose track. The actual production is taking place at various sites in and around Jamrock Quarter, north of here.
Wild Pine seems to be well apprised of the local drug trade, ma'am. Do you mean to say the Union also produces the product? Sells drugs, I mean?
We're in logistics. It's our business to know. And no. As far as the company knows, the Union does not produce it. They transport the ingredients for a cut. Yes, but you won't get anything out of Evrat and the Dock Workers Union. Still, every chain has its weak link.
The handoff. The motor lorries at the roundabout.
Precisely. Someone needs to move the ingredients from the harbour into the city. Once they reach Jamrock, they're distributed to a network of local manufacturers well beyond our grasp. But in transit, they're vulnerable. Perhaps you've noticed that a number of lorries are tangled in a traffic jam at the roundabout just now. Interview the drivers who are still hanging about. One of them might be waiting for a crucial shipment. I'll be explicit. If you find this driver, I will share company secrets with you.
Uncovering Union secrets could also give you an upper hand when dealing with them.
No. We asked East Motor Track to raise the drawbridge. The road company is a partner of one of our subsidiaries. However, this is a limited time opportunity. Once the complaint has been processed by the Trade Committee, they'll have no choice but to lower the drawbridge, and the operation will continue. Thousands of litres of raw ingredients will pour onto the streets of Revachol. Not the east across the river, but the west. The vulnerable, the weary.
Well, at least this solves one mystery.
What is that, Lieutenant?
Why I had to call East Motor Track and beg them to open a drawbridge for me. I'd wondered since I first drove in, on my motor carriage.
I am sorry for the inconvenience, Lieutenant Kisaragi, but we need them trapped here. This is a unique opportunity. I'm sure you understand. How do you think they're financing this strike? There are thousands of unpaid dock workers going strong for the 4th month straight.
There was a shakedown of local businesses preceding the strike. Many were squeezed to bankruptcy to fund it.
With all due respect to these desert cacti, the contents of a few cash registers cannot provide for 2,000 men. The local businesses can scarcely provide for themselves. Precisely. Smuggled out of that very gate at night, most likely, then loaded onto lorries and driven to Jamrock. You simply need to find one driver who will open up to you.
It sounds like she tried looking into it herself, but she's clearly not the type your typical lorryman would confide in.
We did, on more than one occasion. Apparently, there's some sort of inter-precinct disagreement about whose jurisdiction this area falls under.
We know the company has launched its own probe into the union's alleged involvement. We also know it's come up empty. It's not just the RCM. No one's been able to find any hard evidence.
Well, here's your chance, officers. Yes? Excellent. According to my reports, there are at least 3 lorry drivers lingering near the roundabout. Hopefully one of them will know something. It may come to nothing, or it may just blow the case wide open. I can keep the drawbridge up for a few more days at least. You should have the time you need. In the meantime, let me know if there's any other way I may be of assistance.
Is what you want to say, but it isn't that easy, is it? Look at that lady. Take a gander. Squint your eyes, bub. A well-kempt, yet tastefully short bob of dark hair. Despite the first hints of grey, she's elected to keep it au naturel, shaped into a permanent wave, late 40s style. While dull orange pearls hang from her earlobes, red from the cold. Her light green eyes scan you, full of knowledge and worry, wealth and all its possibilities. These are the kind eyes of the rich man that seem to say everything is possible, within reason. Now look at you, you misery-clad simian, barely able to tie your own laces. Your armpits are lakes, a scythe of booze precedes you. Your hair sticks to your forehead and your underwear feels uncomfortable. You're poor, poor as balls. You can't ask this person for money. You're too. You think your little communism protects you from this feeling? No. The more demeaning it is to grovel at her feet. Oh God, the lieutenant is here too. Do not dishonor the force.
As I was saying, if there's any way I may be of assistance, please don't hesitate.
Voila, you're doing it.
Why, yes, I am rich. How much money do you need? Hopefully not too much. I couldn't bring all of it with me.
She's surprisingly nonchalant about this. Could it be that she somehow knows more about your predicament than she's letting on?
That's a good sum. Not too small, not fantastically large.
She removes a few notes and hands them to you. The paper is cold and oily to the touch. Whoa, whoa! Did you see how easy that was? Ask her for more. Toot toot, train to Moneytown. Can you eat honor? Are you an honorvore? Give me a break.
So, I hope I didn't just bribe you, officer. It may not be technically illegal under the Emergency Act, but still.
You're right, ma'am, that donations are permitted under the Emergency Act, unseemly as it may be, as long as they are properly logged with the precinct.
Which he most certainly will do. Now, how else can I help the RCM today, besides supplementing its salaries?
Can I help you? Thanks. I hope you found what you were looking for. How strange. I certainly didn't put them there. Sylvie had the keys before I got here, and I can vouch for her. I can vouch for all my staff. None of us would tamper with the crime scene. The trash collection service, CS Municipal. I don't see why they would put anything in the trash, though.
Ah, the elusive CS Municipal. I doubt we'll be able to track down who was sent here last and when. This will have to be one of those little threats that solves itself down the road. Thank you anyway.
Yes? Yes, have you got it? Well... Great. Thank you, officer. That's all I wanted. Payment for services rendered.
He's not sorry about his behavior for your sake. Now that you have money, he really wants to make sure you're not angry with him.
It's good you paid before 9 p.m., or your door would have been locked electronically. Please pay for each night in advance starting tomorrow. 20 real per night.
I'll take a room here too.
Of course. Always happy to have officers from the RCM as guests. Anything else I can do for you? Another thing. Great. Yes?